This year, we're going to ship almost 5 gigawatt to the US. We are actually number one in terms of the importation volumes into the US this year. You have to consider the last 3 years was the abnormal market situation, but Trina has been growing statically from year to year. I'm so proud of my team.
Hey, happy new year, Solar Warriors. Welcome. It is 2024. I can hardly believe it. We're going to kick this year into high gear with one of the longest interviews I've done in a while, but also one of the best. Candidly, I know I've said that a few times, but it is rare that I get a chance to really pull back the veil, peel back the layers of the onion of a career with this much consequence. You see, when I was a young whippersnapper trying to figure out, get my feet planted in the solar industry on my, I think, third move in the solar industry, I moved to a then relatively little known company in the United States called Trina Solar. And I remember well meeting a guy named Steven Zhu when I was at Trina and thinking this guy has so much lore around him. He seems like he's practically a co-founder and really speaking from a position of confidence and understanding and a confidant to the chairman, Jifan Gao, the creator and founder of Trina. And now I know why. And over the next couple of hours, you will as well. You see, Steven has a fantastic history from growing up in China to studying here stateside, going back to China, leaving what was a very promising career to start his entrepreneurial journey, start a wireless company. At one point, true story, he jokingly told Mr. Gao that he couldn't afford to hire Steven because his company was making more money than Trina. Oh, how the evolution of this story intrigued me. And so I dug deep with Steven, and that's why I'm launching this as the first episode of the year, because this truly is one of those stories that you want to listen and lean in. And like with a couple of years ago when we kicked off the year with Carrie Hayes from REC, and you really should listen to that episode too, because it was tremendous. Steven and I go super deep into not just how and why he couldn't not do this, right? Why this is the thing that he spent most of his career focused on, but some of the backstory that most people don't know about how Trina got its start and how it evolved to become not just one of the top solar panel manufacturers in the world, but one of the leaders in innovating around technology with the highest production N-type TOPCon module and routinely breaking records in module innovation. And now is the largest importer of record for solar panels in the United States in the year of 2023, as you probably heard in our episode back in December. And they're bringing manufacturing to the United States. We're grateful and proud of the opportunity that I finally had over the last year to work again with Trina. And I kept asking, please let me get Steven on the show. Please let me get Steven on the show. And they finally acquiesced. So Steven, thank you for that. Thank you, dear listener, for taking the time to tune in. Sorry for the abnormally long intro to an abnormally long episode, but I am super excited about this episode in particular. If you, like me, want to hear from the founders, creators, the CEOs and executives on the front lines of the clean energy transition, lifting our industry from the dust into tomorrow and into your homes, well, you're in the right place, because we've done more than 670 such episodes here on SunCast and counting. Please stay tuned. You can check out the whole back catalog at mysuncast.com or right in the podcast player that you are in. But without further ado, let's get ready to tune up your skills, Solar Warrior, as we tune into another fantastic deep dive conversation here on SunCast. Well, I've been looking forward to the conversation we're going to have today for quite some time. In fact, whether or he remembers it or not, today's guest, Steven, and I met very briefly while he was kind of phasing out, and I was almost kind of phasing into Trina Solar. But as you'll hear today, Steven's impact on my career and many others. And in fact, the Trina business as a whole is deeper and more profound than I think even most Trina employees are aware. We're going to discover that and much more. Super happy to have Steven Zhu on the show. Welcome, Steven.
It's a good pleasure.
Steven, I like to kick things off by reading a quote. I would encourage you to, if you haven't already, think about a quote that inspires you that you could share with us as well. I'll go first, and this one is by Douglas Malloch. I've shared it before, but it's one of my favorites. Good timber does not grow with ease. The stronger wind, stronger trees. The further sky, the greater length. The more the storm, the more the strength. By sun and cold, by rain and snow. In trees and men, good timbers grow. And I love that quote because it reminds us that it is through the friction and the wind and the trials in life that the good, strong timbers make it, right? The hardwoods. And it's a good reminder for everyone as they build their careers.
Absolutely. I don't have any particular quote I really like, but there was the old Chinese wisdom word saying, if you try to get there, sometimes speed up might not be the fastest way. You have to take things step by step. I like that because, a lot of times we pay a lot of attention to what we're trying to reach, and we ignore the ways that we are going there. And, faster you go, and sometimes you miss a lot of things down the road. Yeah. And, sooner or later that will come back to you. So I try to be static as much as possible and try to be, solid for each step. That actually helped me to get a lot, regarding my career and also how we manage the business.
Yeah, you've been very methodical in your career, as we'll explore today. Can we, at the outset, at maybe 30, 50,000 feet, think about the macro problem? How would you describe the problem that you all, and I mean you all because you were very involved in the very beginning of Trina Solar, created the company to solve? What at a meta layer does Trina contribute to resolving in the world?
Generally speaking, renewable energy is coming to the world to help to solve the climate situation. But, relatively what we call the grid parity, where the cost has to be low enough so the industry can have sizable, chimming into the energy structure, so that everybody can afford that, so it's a balance that has to be reached, which is, the challenge for the whole industry. So that's why the first couple of decades, the industry is trying to drive the cost down as much as possible so that it can be popularized, and industrialized to everybody to use.
That makes a lot of sense, to be able to make renewable energy affordable and reach grid parity, which is essentially where the cost to install the kilowatt hours or electrons from renewables is at parity with the existing generation, which for the most part around the world is fossil fuel. We, over the last 2 decades, have needed to introduce new systems and efficiencies to drive the cost, the inputs down to achieve that generation cost structure. With that in mind, for those who are maybe not familiar with the renewable sector at all, but are listening to SunCast because they're trying to learn, introduce them to Trina Solar and why the company that you've helped create is solving the problem that we've just enunciated.
A lot of people thinking about the cost reduction. They think about, shall we compress the labor rate? Shall we compress the material cost? In solar industry, that actually demonstrates it's just a very niche portion of that. And a bigger portion is keep on, develop the technology, keep on improve the efficiency, productivity. I still remember in the early days that we utilizing the polysilicon almost like 50 grams per watt. And now we can utilize 3 grams of polysilicon per watt. The wafer thickness used to be, 15 to 20 nanometers. And now it's down to like 3 or 4. So that significantly saved the cost, reduce the cost, but also save a lot of materials. You used to need 10 tons of the material to produce 1 gigawatt, and now you only need half of those, or probably even 10% of that. so not only save the Earth's resources, but also to make the solar lower cost so that everybody can enjoy that. And also that involves with constantly and sustainably investment into almost every sector of the industry, including the technology, including the factory capacities, including the equipment, and all these things putting together. That's how solar be able to get to the current stage barely in the last 30 years.
When you first met Mr. Gao, founder, chairman of Trina Solar, what was the cost per watt approximately that solar panels from Isophoton and others were available in the marketplace, roughly?
Solar panel first, the capacity altogether globally, that's probably less than 100 megawatt.
Yeah.
That was back in 2003, 2004. And it was like $10, way over $10 per watt,
Wow.
for the panels. And panels much smaller. Therefore, the balance of system are more expensive.
Yeah.
And a lot of grid are not support, the solar to inject the power into the grid. Therefore, a lot of, standalone systems. But, as you can see, the total cost and especially LCOE wise, over the last 30 years, it's jumped more than 95%.
Yeah. So $10 a watt for a panel back 2003. Fast forward 20 years, where are we at roughly on delivered price for panels today? Just to give folks a sense of scale.
Yeah, right now it's the panel itself roughly is about 35 cents per watt. And for residential, it's probably a little bit more expensive because generally speaking, bigger the panel, more the power, unit, cost is going lower.
And global capacity compared with the under 100 megawatts available in 2003?
Right now, they've got to be over 200 gigawatt.
Yeah, it's insane. I remember when I was at Trina had just crested the 2 billion sort of corporate valuation and was somewhere in the 2 to 3 gigawatts capacity range. And that was considered like record breaking, right? We became, I say we, because as a Trina alum, having never worked for another solar panel manufacturer, I still align a lot with Trina. We became the largest solar panel manufacturer in the world at the time, during that 2011 to 2014 timeframe. How much is Trina's capacity globally on an annual basis now?
Yeah, it's amazing to see it grows. When I joined Trina, it was literally 2 megawatt of the capacity module only. And now in China, we have roughly about 30 gigawatt of the capacity already installed, running, producing. And we will reach about 50 gigawatt next year. And overseas, we also deployed in Southeast Asia. We have a vertical integrated line all the way from ingot, wafer, and cell and module in Vietnam. That's roughly about 4.5 gigawatt. And then in Thailand, we have another, TOPCon N-type 2.5 gigawatt, and we just announced to build a manufacturer in US, which is 5 gigawatt of the capacity. So as you can see, that actually grows over 10,000 times, in the last, 25 years.
It's amazing. It's unbelievable. I mean, Trina having one factory vertically integrated for almost 5 gigawatts, it was more than all of Trina's capacity at the time that I was an employee there. Timing in business is everything. And we'll talk in a number of ways about the sort of the fortuitous timing in your career in a few moments. But when you look back over the last 20 years, what do you see as inflection points that were, so what needed to be true in the marketplace for companies like Trina to work, for it to exist at all?
I want to see a couple of things: consistency, and persistency. Generally speaking, as I say, because this industry is growing so fast, so the supply and demand situation are taking turns to take the lead.
Yeah.
Something is always lagging behind the other ones. So it doesn't matter market is up or down. You have to consistently to invest into it. You have to keep up with the wave as much as possible. You're absolutely right. The timing is very critical. If you are too ahead of the wave, and sometimes drowning in the wave, and if you too behind that, you're gonna be left out. A lot of channels and resources, a lot of things could be established already, and when you try to catch up. On the other hand, some of the newcomers might have better advantage also, because equipment is keep on getting cheaper, capex is keep on going lower, and efficiency technologies keep on going higher. It is very important to keep it balanced. I would say Trina, as one of the longest survivor in this industry, we evidence so many rounds of the waves, up and downs. We have to plan everything. We have to debate, we have to argue, we have to discuss into details regarding the feasibility of the things. But once we decide this is the direction, we have to execute everything really fast in order to make sure there is a right balance in between, the right timing and also the correct moves.
Along the way, Trina has achieved some pretty remarkable milestones. I want to just kind of read for folks that maybe are unfamiliar. Trina has shipped more than 140 gigawatts of modules in the time that it's been around. We'll talk more in depth about the founding process and everything that has happened. More than 65 gigawatts of 210 millimeter modules. Collectively, more than 7 billion trees equivalent offset in terms of greenhouse gas, just from the volume that Trina has produced. Trina, since the days I was there, has been continuously ranked as not only a Bloomberg Tier 1 bankable module, but also one of the originals in the Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition rated modules that was taking ardent effort to reduce the inputs that might be considered toxic from a product perspective. Consistently since the beginning, I think for 9 scorecards now, been consecutively recognized. In the PVEL reliability scorecard, has achieved AAA status in every one of PV Tech's bankability rankings, and I think is the only manufacturer rated as 100% bankable in Bloomberg's survey respondents, which I think all points to the commitment to quality, consistency, persistence that you pointed out earlier. 25 world records. I don't know if it's still true. When I was at Trina, for sure, and since then, Trina had the largest R&D budget, kind of like the SunGrow of the module world, or SunGrow is like the Trina of the inverter world, right? Like dominating on R&D, like always setting the standard, certainly for module efficiency. Currently, and the most recent world record for 24.4%, as we covered in a previous N-type module-focused episode that we did with one of your team members. And then lastly, something that we just recently covered with you at RE Plus, when I did an interview that folks can watch on our YouTube channel, you've announced manufacturing here domestically in Wilmer, Texas. Let's go to that one, because I think Trina's track record more or less speaks for itself, but let's talk for a few minutes on the factory in Texas. What does it represent for you as a leader in the industry and a leader in the organization who's been around for the entire 20 plus year tenure and history of Trina? Can you talk a bit about the decision to do place a manufacturing facility here in the US?
Yeah, I mean, solar is it's very unique compared with other industries, because most of the market initialized with incentive programs, and the most that's sponsored by the local, countries. Therefore, but on the other hand, the manufacturer cannot be scattered out too much. It has to be centralized as much as possible, consider the supply chain reasons. Well, obviously, over the years, the US has already grown into a very unique market also, because the country size-wise, we have big enough market, and a big enough land to host the solar. On the other hand, economy is good enough to sponsor, the solar incentive programs. So US is a market that we always looking and we always deploy into. About 6 or 7 years ago, we actually were looking into the US after the AVCVD just came out. And back to that time, the cost was not ready, the supply chain was not ready. So after so many years, back to that time, we decided to eventually land our, overseas manufacturer in Southeast Asia. That happened to be the right timing also because as you can see, a lot of the US manufacturers back then, like SunPower or First Solar, in the last 10 years, they also deploy in the Southeast Asia, to enjoy the lower cost of the manufacturer and closer to the, supply chains.
And specifically Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia, Indonesia.
Exactly.
Right?
But, recently with the inspiration of the RA, with the long-term sustainability of the policies of the ITC, that the U.S. market obviously become the highest return, in terms of the, solar investment. That attracts a lot of manufacturers. It makes sense actually, to have the manufacturer, at least a part of the manufacturer closer to the market. You have to, I just give a talk in the, in the sales tag, a couple of weeks ago. You have to diversify, instead of putting all the eggs into one basket. You have to enjoy both the globalization and deglobalization. You have to balance between the, the supply chain security and the lower cost of the, manufacturing. That's why, as you can see, our phase one currently is already running for a couple of years. That have all the Southeast Asia, capacities, vertical integrated from ingot all the way to the module, altogether 6.5 gigawatt, currently supplying US. In matter of fact, this year, we're already number one in terms of the volume supplying to the US market. And then we are building the, this Texas, manufacturer, that will come online by next year, probably towards the middle of next year. The first panel will be rolling out. That's the module only at this moment because we did our research wise. We do have the confidence that we will bring a lot of, bombs and, other vendors closer to our factory to build up the ecosystem, to, make sure it's not only a one-time factory, but it's actually a long-term sustainable plans. And then we are also, build up the supply chain, upper stream. We signed, almost there are only 3 poly makers in US, survived over the last, couple of decades. And we signed up with 2 of them for the long-term contract supplies already. And we, gradually we will try to localize more supply chains over to build the manufacturing ecosystem together. I always tell both my team and also, external, reporters that building a manufacturer is easy, but it's actually only the first step, but, you need the whole supply chain. You need the ecosystem in order to keep on driving the cost down, keep on improve the efficiency, and keep on getting the labor trained, so they become experienced worker, which is very critical in terms of the productivity and the yield, which is definitely a big portion of the cost reduction also, and we're going to continue to do that. And we do have our plan for the second phase already in the US. It's probably third phase in front of our customer, which is build the cell and a module, to move more integrated locally in here. So you mentioned about all those big numbers. It accumulates, right? Even if you do small steps every day, every month, then it accumulates to a huge number. Same thing here, we do things statically. And if we survive the market long enough, you're going to see the final result. That's going to be a big contribution to everything.
Yeah. I remember, 10, 15 years ago in China, Trina was among the first, if not the first, to institute this sort of hub and spoke campus model, right? Where you had the factory producing the modules, you had everyone from glass manufacturers, the glass vendors to the pallet manufacturers within 1 kilometer of the factory, right? Do you see that model eventually being rolled out here in the US as well?
It has to. Generally speaking, it's not only one particular product and then all the bumps around it. It actually requires, I mentioned about upstream with the, polysilicon makers, wafer players, manufacturers, but also with the downstream customers, the factory location, you know, uh, we experienced the last 3 years, the chaos of the logistic, right? Sometimes oil price is high, sometimes oil, logistic cost is down, but if the manufacturer is closer to the market, we selected Texas. It's right in the middle of the U.S. and it's the best place for the, for the solar. Have plenty of sunshine, same as California and Florida, right? So by doing that, it's already a cost-saving plan blend into the design. And same thing regarding the inventories that can help the customer to shrink the lead time of the delivery, which could be very cost saving. If you have the manufacturer 6,000 miles away and then you have to ship it over here, and then sometimes importation regulation changes and the people have to ship it back. A lot of things are wasted. Those are the rooms that we definitely can improve and keep on improving.
How long do you see required for that build out of the full BOM, where we've now fully sort of domesticated, as it were, or reshored is the other term, the full manufacturing process?
Well, if purely based on, the lead time of manufacture construction, it's probably very quick, but still, in the US, it's kind of behind the, Asian countries in terms of the building speed. But normally 2 to 3 years, you definitely can get, some components are longer, like glass, those furnace, once you run it, you cannot stop it. And, frames, but some other things, EVA or junction box, that should be very easy.
Got it. Makes sense.
Right.
Steven, I want to step back from the sort of the detail of how Trina works and think about you as the executive in focus and kind of how you got to where you are today. Could you take me back to your childhood? You grew up in a very specific location that helped give you, I'll say, access or presence to the international nature of China at a time when China was beginning to open up to the outside world and become globalized. Can you talk a bit about your childhood, where you grew up, and the impact of your parents' work on ultimately on your careers?
Yeah, I was born in Nanjing, the old capital of China, and which is in Jiangsu provinces. Is about 2 hours train, high speed train right now, from Shanghai, and which is the most advanced, developed, provinces in China. Both my parents, my grandparents are worked for the university. They're professors. My grandpa, actually graduated from Southwestern University in U.S. And he was the first group of the biologists, to went back China when PRC was founded in 1949. And and then my mom was the first round of the scholars that were exchange scholars that was sent over to U.S. Back in 80s, sponsored by the World Bank right after the Cultural Revolution. And China start to open door policy. They start to exchange the, students or scholars with U.S. And so I was growing in that atmosphere, and that we're always watching U.S. movies. We're always, like the products that we're shopping for.
And you learned English at an early age as well.
Well, that's kind of mandatory for, people start to learn English when they are in elementary school. But with more and more open door policy, you get more and more chance to watch the movie, get a talk with the visitors, and to my particular family, we have more chances because, my grandpa has more students in US and they come to visit China almost every year, every quarter. And, so we get a chance to see what we call the foreigners and I play with them. And, they brought the gift from US. And so we get to, see different, new toys and, that actually, also help us to open a lot of minds, regarding the outside world.
Sure.
And so, when my mom came for the second, journey to the U.S., invited by her professor, that was on a private sponsor. So she has to give up her original job in the Chinese university, what we used to call the iron ball, right? So you have the iron ball, you cannot break it. That's your job forever. So she has to give up that job and then come to the visit by herself. And so, but, she's been working as a visiting scholar, for quite a while in the University of Virginia. So she likes that job. It's much more free. And so she came over here and then I came after the first year of the college. I also joined University of Virginia.
So you followed in your mother's footsteps to come to UVA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So we'll talk a bit about, I want to talk a bit about the impact of your father's work. But I'm curious, before I ask that, were there any early signs of entrepreneurial tendency or strong leadership qualities that you developed or that others noticed in you? Like, in the US, we might talk about kids that had a paper route or that, were selling things to their peers in school. Were there any early signs of entrepreneurial tendencies for you?
I thought about it, as most of the Asian Americans just, first generation come over here. I was majoring in computer science also because, that was the, introduction from the family saying, okay, computer science is the best one, that can easier to find a job when you graduate and it make good money, as a software engineering, so that was how I pick it up. And I served for IBM for almost 10 years in Austin, Texas for the high-end server side. And, but I always like to talk to people instead of talk to machine. Right? So while I was in IBM, I actually, I actually founded IBM's, training system, that for the particular RA6000 systems, we have global services. And so we invite people from Australia, from China, from Japan over to be training in Austin. And so getting closer to that, service route.
Yeah.
And we also propose and build. There used to be 3 layers, and Austin is the first layer, US is first layer, Japan is the second one for the headquarters for the Asian, and then China is the third layer. But with the market in China growing bigger and bigger, we actually propose to the company to raise up the Chinese level to be more independent from China so that they can get the direct support from US side. And so I always like to participate into those kind of things, and I always like to think about the pros and cons of different new ideas. Does that make sense? How to implement those kind of things. I would love to.
Throughout your childhood, you not only had the exposure to your grandfather and the foreigners who came in and exposed you to a lot of different cultural values from your own, and allowed you to develop this multicultural sort of global perspective on the world. You also had an example of sort of an entrepreneurial father, right? He worked for a state-owned company. Can you talk about the role that your father had within the technology development of the Chinese telecom industry?
Yeah, I mean, he was the physics major, which is very traditional in China. But I think when he was in the college, he already devoted interest into, back to that time, there was no EE, there was no semiconductor major in the college. So everything actually belongs to physics, but, he was, showing a strong interest. And then, when he graduated, he, in China, most of the people back to that time goes to the state, company if you are a good student. And so he joined as the, normal worker. And over his 40 years, career in that company, he's only worked for one company from beginning all the way to the end. And, he grew from a normal worker all the way to the VP of the corporate. He founded, his state-owned company is called Panda International.
Yeah.
And they, in the military works, they do the radar, devices, satellites, stations. But they also, starting from open door policies, a lot of those state-owned companies start to do a lot of civilian works, like washing machines, TVs, LED, all those kind of stuff. And so he helped the company to found the telecommunication divisions.
Wow.
For Panda International, and they were the first joint venture with the Motorola here. They built up a factory in Tianjin, and so they created a co-brand, Panda and Motorola. I can't remember exactly the name, but they were the first one to offer those flip top,
the flip ones, the V Stars.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess that entrepreneurship was always in his mind. Which is very, I won't say it's very unique in China, because after open door policies, after 70s and 80s, people are eager to open up. People are eager to looking for the opportunities. Anything new that really strike them. And there
were opportunities to change career paths, right? To leave the state company and go work for private corporations. Is that what you mean?
That's a big decision, though,
Right, because it's breaking the iron ball. That's like you say.
Exactly.
It's a lifelong guarantees job versus uncertainty.
I know. Yeah. And a lot of things was not proven to be true.
Right.
But if you look back right now, for the last 30 years, I mean, obviously, I won't say the pros and cons between private company or state-owned companies. But obviously, a private company has much more life in force, and, it's much more, it's a big contribution. I think they contribute to almost 70-80% of the employee in China, and, contribute almost 70% of the GDP.
Yeah.
So that speaks itself already.
Yeah. I think a fun story is how you chose to go to IBM. Because coming from UVA as a multilingual, multicultural, upwardly mobile Chinese student, you must have had multiple opportunities. Why'd you choose IBM?
Computer science, like my parents said, it's not that hard to find a job, especially back in 90s. And so I did have choices to go to big company like IBM, and I also had the chances to go to smaller companies, more entrepreneurial ones. So I consulted with my father, and my father says, no, go to the big company, go to IBM. And, over the years, they accumulated a lot of, experience, a lot of systems that you can never get, from smaller companies, so that even if you don't know how to run it, you have to see it, you have to learn from it, you have to be part of it, in order to see the picture. In China, there's an old word say, even if you never eat pork, you got to see how pig runs, right?
Oh yeah. Oh man.
Right? Yeah. So seeing is it's very critical. I think even back to that time, while you're still the freshman, that you don't know that much about it. But that gives you all the structures, all the things, how people run it. You might not totally understand it. But later, when you start to run your own company, or when you join other company, those things flashing back, and you definitely see it. And if you are not only memorize the things, but actually understand the basic logic behind it, that definitely can help you to build whatever things that you want.
Yeah. I always try to give folks the advice when they ask, as it happens occasionally, for career advice. And I've done this on more than one occasion. Folks who have an opportunity to go work for a big bank or a small startup, big utility, or project development company. My advice, despite the current focus on entrepreneurial activity and endeavor and hustle startup culture in the US, I think that everyone is well served with the advice your father gave you. For that reason, go work for a company who can show you at a macro level what the industry actually is about and how it works and what good, efficient systems look like, what process really means, because these companies have only gotten that big because they've learned how to build consistent practices and teach them to others inside the organization, which is, if you want to build a big company one day, what you need to learn. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I was lucky that when I was in IBM, it was Luke Ginster was the, CEO of the company. And that was the time when IBM started to transit from a pure hardware company into a solution company, into a consulting company. And so I definitely evidence a lot of things like that. Probably back to that time, I don't quite understand. For example, IBM used to give a lot of hardware for free or really low cost, but charge a lot every year, for the services. At first I don't understand, in China, it's hard to understand that hardware can be given for free.
Mm.
And, they take default, the software should be free. But now the business model is the other way around,
Yeah.
so that does inspire you to think a lot. If you don't understand the things, you can either give up or move on, or you can, keep on digging deeper and think about the logic behind it. That kind of thinking training, can help you to be more creative and also to be more logic. So when you see the new stuff, or the new industry, everything has to make sense. You have to think it through and you have to plan it well. And sometimes you have to try it in order to demonstrate whether that's working or not. All these kind of thinking method, it's universal. It's a common sense.
You were at IBM for 5 years, working on various divisions, high price servers, learning how to do the consulting side, selling services. At what point did you start to feel the call in the early 2000s? This is post-internet bubble burst, right? But pre-true scale for companies like Google. Networking was starting to become a thing around then. I was in my first few years of grad school around then as well. So circa 2002-ish time, when did you start to feel the call to step out of IBM? And I imagine for you and for your family, this must have been a period of trepidation and cautious discussion, right? Like, you decided to move out and start your own company. Can you talk about that decision framework and what you ended up, what you ultimately ended up doing?
I'm not Elon Musk. I'm not Bill Gates. I envy those people. I give a lot of respect and admire to those people. So I probably didn't plan my career to get into the entrepreneur. And I also think it's also you can learn a lot when you join a company, right? You don't have to be the owner yourself. So I founded my own company at the end of the IBM because there was an opportunity. I mean, the wireless internet just came out into the market, and I do think that's perfect to fit into the Chinese market,
right?
Because there was a lot of new construction coming out, and burying the wire is always so suffer, very costly. And I do think wireless, communication is definitely the right way, to approach the market and, given the future. Of course, back to that time, it was very early stage. The bandwidth is really low. The efficiency is kind of low also, and the cost is very high, but still, I do think so. So once some of the universities or my father's customers or business partners approach me saying, okay, look, we have the chance, to build this new campus for the school, and we want do the broadband installation. Is there any better solutions? So that was the time that actually struck me, and so I went back to China and founded this company, to do the wireless internet, service providers to most of the educational institutes. Um, yeah, well, that company runs for roughly about 5 years also. And, until I joined Trina, I become so busy. So I transferred that, entity to my partners.
How did you get introduced to Mr. Gao?
Yeah, well, he's the true entrepreneur, big friend. I would say, yeah. He always looking for the opportunities, looking for the new things. And, so this is actually a story that, at the beginning of 2000, I believe, there was a Spanish company, Isofoton, was looking to sell the company. So Mr. Gao was interested, and but he doesn't has that much of the funding back to that time. And so he came to my father, because the state-owned company normally has a lot of fundings. And want to see if that's possible that we can form a three-way partnership,
a joint venture like he had done with Motorola, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Panda International could be the fund, investors, and Trina has the experience to operate them, and then Isofoton has these Spanish and a European brand.
And for those who are unfamiliar, Isofoton at the time was a large European solar panel manufacturer. Not a lot of folks listening may be familiar with it, but those of us who've been in the industry long enough certainly are.
Yes.
Yeah. And was Trina could you characterize what Trina was in 2000? Was it just an idea in Jifan Gao's head? What was what kind of business was it?
Oh, Trina was very small.
Yeah.
We barely had about 100 people, probably even less than that.
And what was the activity? What was he making money on at that time?
Majorly, we do the system integrations. So we build buildings, with some of the solar embedded into the solutions. But majority for the exterior walls, some building materials, and solar is just a
BIPV.
luxury option, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
BIPV, right?
And if I recall correctly, he had gone to study in Australia. Is that right?
No, he didn't go to Australia.
No,
he had a chance to go to Berkeley here.
No way.
Yeah, but he eventually he graduated from the same undergraduate in
Nanjing,
the Nanjing University, same school I went to, and my father and my mother graduated, and then he went to Jilin University to persuade after Professor Tang Aoqing. He's the founder of the physical chemistry in China.
Okay.
That's how he got into the photovoltaic technology. Right?
And did your father and Panda take the bait? Did they decide to partner with him on the Isofoton thing? How'd that turn out?
It didn't work out. Eventually the state-owned company are really slow and very conservative, especially talking about the investment outside China back to that time. Remember, this is the end of the 90s and the beginning of the millennium, but they become good friends.
Yeah.
And
your father and Mr. Gao,
right? And they talk to each other every once in a while, and a lot of things regarding new business ideas, and all those kind of things.
So your father mentored Mr. Gao effectively.
I won't say mentor. It's just experience sharing, good friends, right?
Fast forward a few years, and Mr. Gao comes knocking again. There's an RFP.
Yeah, that's how I know Mr. Gao. Actually, I think that was 2002 or 2003. There is a brightness program.
Brightness, like the light, like brightness. Yeah. Okay.
Brightness.
Yeah. Okay.
The purpose of that is to bring the lights to some of the rural areas or border provinces, that including Xinjiang, Xizang, Tibet, Yunnan, those provinces. I can't remember exactly the capital investment. It's roughly about 20 billion RMB or something like that. Because a lot of places are so high, there's no grid up there. So solar probably become the only possible solution.
Right.
So Mr. Gao came to my father because, he has some state connections and, we had a family member that used to be that was the governor of Tibet, back then, in China, in order to do the business, you have to know the people, you have to know the connections. And so he asked my father's help, to go up to Tibet, to bid for the project. And my dad said it was too high. Tibet is 6,000 meters elevation, and he cannot go up there, with his edge. So so he introduced me, to Mr. Gao, and
so you were the family surrogate.
Yeah, exactly. So we end up to go to Tibet together with me and Mr. Gao. We shared the same hotel room.
Wow.
And we spent about almost a month up there, and talk with all the government officials, and talk with the EPC companies and everything. And eventually, the Trina wants the project, and Trina was the only private company. That was amazing part, because most of those state-owned, projects are shared by the state-owned companies.
Right.
There are only 4 companies that actually won the bid. Trina is the only, private ones.
Wow.
To won the project.
Mm-hmm.
So since then, we've been keep on talking, and
I want to characterize for folks who will be curious about it. You won a project. You won the award for 40 standalone systems in Tibet for roughly 20 billion RMB, as I recall from our previous conversation. So it was about
20 billion split between 4 companies.
Oh, split between the 4. So what was the average cost at that time to deliver one of those standalone systems?
Oh, super expensive.
Yeah.
Remember, like I said, the module was like over $10 per watt.
Yeah.
And the system cost is almost 5 times of it. And, believe it or not, back to that time, those standalone systems need to equip it with storage also. So it was early days of the storage technology. And then plus the module, a lot of villages are really, distant. And you have to use the donkeys or horses to carry the panel into the village to install them. So each one of the system is roughly about 50K to 100K. So altogether it's less than 100 megawatt of the project.
Wow.
Trina don't even have the panel ourselves.
Oh yeah.
We haven't started to produce the panels all the way until 2005.
Okay.
That was the time when I joined the company. But in 2003, when the brightness projects, we don't have our own panels, so we act most likely as the system integrators.
Okay.
EPC companies, and so we buy the panels from Mitsubishi, Sanyong, Kyocera, and then install up there in Tibet.
That's so interesting. Trina at the time was an integrator, and this formed essentially the seed capital and experience to eventually move into panel manufacturing. Is it true that at one point Mr. Gao tried to hire you, and you joked that his company didn't make enough money to hire you?
Yeah, I mean, back to that time, be frankly with you, that the solar was not that rich and sizable. And most of the companies are smaller companies, just startups. And the market was not ready. Remember the German feed-in tariff policy came out right around like 2004. And so before that, even if you do have the manufacturer, you probably can only do smaller projects like I mentioned, 50K, 100K. And people have to think about how to get their investment back because there's no incentives. Right. So yeah, Trina was really small, and since we've been to get to bed together, and he's been keep on asking me to join the company. I was joking with him. I said, my company make more than you do, and how you be able to afford me, right? And
I love that.
yeah, I mean, and then the next 25 years, I've been serving Trina,
Ain't that
before I know.
yeah.
Right.
So what ultimately seduced you to say yes to Mr. Gao?
Yeah, so 2004, that was the year I remember that the one, Japan, Germany all came up with a very attractive, programs.
Yeah.
European is ready for solar. And so, Germany guys came out to the world and buying out every panel, every piece of the panel they can find. And So that was the time really ignite the whole industry going forward. And a lot of investors are looking for the opportunities, but they don't know how to do it. On the other hand, a lot of Chinese entrepreneurs, they do have experience, like Dr. Xi, later founded SunTech, and Mr. Zhao, he founded CEG, Sonergy, and same thing as Trina. And I remember that was the time I had a conversation with Mr. Gao, and we would discuss about this trend. We all agreed this is a very good opportunity. The solar is ready to take off, and he also mentioned, so I asked him, what do you need? He said, yeah, we're lacking two major things. One is we're lacking of the money, of course. We need the investors to support us, to buy all the advanced technology equipments, and the other one is raw materials.
Right. The polysilicon.
Yeah, later I know that almost back to that time there are majority 6 or 7 big poly makers in the world. That's already been washed out after semiconductor up and downs. So Hemlock, REC, Walker, MEMC, Mitsubishi. Yeah, I remember 5 of them are located in U.S. Only one in Germany, one in Japan.
Yeah,
and none of them in China. And 95 or 99% of the polysilicon, produced are supporting semiconductor.
right.
And barely about 1%. And most of the solar are still using the reclaimed materials, recycled materials, the power scraps, the slabs, or, from semiconductor.
Scraps, yeah, what you could get.
Yeah, I mean,
so the objective for Mr. Gao is, Steven, I need you to help me find polysilicon.
Yeah, 2 major tasks. One is to find the materials, the other one is to find the funding, and both of them are actually not in China. It's actually outside China.
Yeah.
And so I was the first employee holding a U.S. passport. Matter of fact, as the
take that, Jim Day.
Yeah, well, Jim Day was like
years later.
10 years later.
I know,
actually.
But he always said it. He was the first U.S. employee. I just love it. Which may or may not be true, but I mean, first U.S. passport is categorically that is held by you. I love that.
Yeah, and so not only the U.S. passport, I was the first foreigner they hire.
Oh wow, you're the first foreign employee at all.
Yeah.
So that's funny that you, as a Chinese natural citizen, are also considered a foreigner because you hold a dual passport.
We don't. I mean, China and the U.S. cannot hold the dual citizenship.
Okay.
So I have to give up my Chinese citizen and join naturalized in U.S.
When did you do that? We didn't talk about that.
Yeah, 97, 98.
So while
right
you're
after
in school.
college, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, that's for another conversation, Steven. We're gonna have to because I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. So you became a U.S. citizen while you were a college student.
Yeah, at the end of the college, I still remember one of the on-campus interview. I joined one of the 10 with the CIA, and so at the end of the interview, I asked them, oh, I didn't know CIA don't start to recruit the foreigners. He said, you don't have a U.S. passport? No, I said I only have the green card. Oh, he said, no, we cannot. We require the U.S. citizen, so you can come back 3 years later. You know,
Wow.
yeah.
How cool. So that was the thing that sparked you saying, well, I need to get the citizenship.
Hmm. Oh, well, not the only one. I
Sure, of
love
course.
US. I love NBA. And, so
I love
I
it.
guess that the family also carries a lot of traditions about
Yeah.
that.
So in 2005, Mr. Gao says, I need you to get on a plane, go to San Francisco, which for those who know SimiCon, which is held in Moscone every year, he asked you to take a trip. This is I think the first trip out to kind of start on these two objectives, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Semicon West, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it calls every July summertime in Moscone Center of San Francisco. And it's one of the semiconductor conferences. And back to that time, solar was, I don't remember I saw any of the solar booths over there. This is 2005.
Yeah.
And so I carried that mission from Mr. Gao saying, we're looking for the material, we're looking for the founder, fundraise. And so I went to Semicon and, due to the visa issue, he could not come back to that time. And so I can, but I don't know, who from the semiconductor is willing to work with solar, who has the materials that we are looking for. So I literally went through all the, 8,000 plus booths in those 2.5 days. Went from booth to booth and check on, we're a small solar company just started and we're looking for polysilicon. Um, you know, um, you know, is there anything that we can do together? So yeah, I mean, that was the beginning of my journey with the solar industry, also with Trina.
Fascinating. And for those who remember Intersolar being co-located with Semicon, I found an article from 2009, and the title is Semicon Sinks, Intersolar Soars. Just to give everyone context, so Intersolar being at that time still, and is still today, one of the largest solar conferences in the world, held in Munich in Germany. They had opened up in San Francisco, I think 2008, and by 2009, from 2005, no solar vendors. 2009, Intersolar was being hailed as the savior of Semicon because all the solar folks were coming in, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's
we
what
evidenced
a
the
rapid
whole
transition.
Absolutely. I mean, we evidenced this whole fast growth of solar industry. I definitely enjoyed it. I still remember that there used to be a solar dedicated conference called Photon.
Mm-hmm.
And the first year is either 2005 or 2006, at the beginning of the 2006, and it was hosted in Sofitel in Munich.
Yep.
And roughly about 100, 200 people joined that, conference. And then the next year, they still host that in Sofitel. And this time, over 400, 500 people joined.
Mm.
So the year after, I believe it was 2007, and they have to move to the Munich Conference Center because it's growing bigger and bigger. And, that year, definitely over 1,000 visitors, joined the conferences. And now you go to any of the, I think we just finished the Las Vegas RE Plus conferences. I heard that's over 50,000 visitors, to join the conference.
Yeah.
And that's only one of the conferences in US.
Yeah. And what's fascinating about that is I find it's all contextual, right? Because in the US, it's hailed as the largest solar conference, but Intersolar is 300,000 attendees.
Mm-hmm.
And how many attendees for SNEC, the Chinese version?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it got to be like double the size.
Yeah, easily 500,000. Yeah. Because at SNEC, I understand that there are more buildings than you could get through in the week. And it's what, something like 50,000 vendors.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And nowadays, if you wanted me to go through all the booths, it's just impossible.
Yeah, it's physically impossible. Yeah. Man, I have a question that's more an observation of Chinese business culture that I think is quite different from the US, with the exception of US family businesses. And that is that any of us who got involved in the solar industry at the time that Trina and others were coming around, LDK is a great example, encountered very young entrepreneurs with a tremendous amount of responsibility and roles, right? CEO of LDK was in his 20s. How do you manage that responsibility? And what do you owe that to? Because, I mean, I'll give you another example. The lady, I remember meeting the lady who's now running Franklin WH's marketing. She can't be older than 25, 27. Very bright, very composed, taking on way more responsibility. You see this in tech right now, but we're talking before the tech industry boomed. There was this kind of like shouldering responsibility at a super young age. Could you talk a bit about that from a cultural perspective?
Well, the last 30 years from, end of the 80s all the way to the WRO entrance at the beginning of the 2020, that, it gives the opportunities to Chinese, unlimited, generally speaking, all the things are going so well. It really regardless of the age, it really regardless of where you came from, whether you are rich or, but every possible things you can find a market and you can get it grow so fast. As a matter of fact, if you are scaling up slower, then you will be washed out ruthlessly. So I don't see the age is it's a barrier.
Okay.
On the other hand, I do think because the solar was growing so fast, that there are so many talents join, and it's the wave push you going forward once you decide, that you want to jump into the wave.
Yeah.
So, I still remember that we, Trina went, IPO in 2006 to New York Stock Exchange. We actually barely prepared for the IPO for NYSE less than a year. The reason for that is at the beginning of 2006, we thought we would not qualify for NYSE. And it needed a tracking record of 7 years, profitable, marginable business, all those records. And we were prepared for NASDAQ. And then the NYSE commissioner came over to China and invite us and say, we want to help you to be the number two. As a matter of fact, the SunTech was already the number one. And so they came to invite us, say, join NYC and, we're going to help you, to achieve that. Solar is so hot and, everything is possible. So I guess once you decide that you're going to jump into the wave, you ride the wave and you're going to have more and more people to join from all the other industry because solar was, such a short history. There was no, solar gurus back then, except some scientists, right?
Right. They were all scientists.
There's no entrepreneurs. And, so I remember in the early days, our HR, asked me, here is a, job description and, we start to hire. And I looking at it, one of the terms is 5 years of solar, experience. I said, we don't have people have 5 years of solar experience. You better remove that. We welcome all the talents coming from semiconductor, coming from electronics, coming from, all over the place, so that's amazing, But on the other hand, you also see these kind of young age. You mentioned about the president of LDK and some of the first time entrepreneur or once things are growing so fast because they are so passionate, a lot of times they cannot balance themselves.
Yeah.
And they cannot, some of the good ones, they are dedicated to the business and, but they become so ambitious So sometimes they get ahead of themselves. They always want to be number one. They always want to be, super big. And some of the, people are getting rich too fast. I do remember Solar did make two or three top, richest guy
Yeah, billionaires. Yeah.
in China.
Hmm.
Not only billionaires, but the
But
top
like richest in
ranked.
China.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
eventually they didn't last that long,
Yeah.
for all kind of reasons. But I do think, is sometimes they never seen this fast growing, and therefore they cannot control
Hmm.
the pace. They
Yeah.
cannot build their foundation solid. They cannot balance between their ambitious, goals, and you need a solid foundation to build all the things, upon that. So if you too ahead of yourself, a lot of times that could causing the disaster. Also, sooner or later that will come back. It might not eat you when the market is good. The demand is, if the demand is, hot, and then it covers all the flaw that you made. So during this time, you need to be extremely careful to try to, you know, not cover, try to build things in order to make sure those gaps are keep on filling. If you don't, then sooner or later, when the market is down, it's going to come back to hit you.
You were among the earliest employees, less than 100 people, maybe 200 people when you joined Trina, and you've literally ridden the wave, gone in and out of work with Trina over the last 20 years. What do you attribute to Trina's success where others have failed in regards to what you just discussed?
Well, I think first thing that we have to learn really fast. All through the last 2 decades of the solar history, you keep on seeing the new technology. I still remember at the beginning it was the casting multi-crystalline technology that was even happened after the monocrystalline, because semiconductor used the monocrystalline technology first, right? So automatically solar carry over the history. And then, people developed the multicrystalline, which is less pure of the material processing, but you be able to get, mass productions, because of the monocrystalline, each charge, each feed can only go with 80 kilograms. I still remember. So your ingots can only pull this long and this big. And the casting, which is multicrystalline, the new technology developed by the GT Solar,
Yeah.
can do like 1 ton, 2 ton each charge.
Yeah.
So you can imagine the output of March, exponentially growth. And then, in the last couple of years, they come back to the mono because, the cost of the mono job, very significantly, therefore, and also the continuous, pooling of the ingots that significantly reduce the cost. But on the other hand, monocrystalline do have the higher efficiency, because it's pure material. And then the PERC technology, bifacial, and, now, ingots is getting very close to the semiconductor. As you see, Trina is one of those pioneers to use 12-inch, ingots now.
Right.
And, 210 technology. And we have the TOPCon, we have the AJT in the future. Yeah, things are moving so fast. You keep on seeing all those new stuff almost every day. And then you keep on, seeing, new people, and which I do think solar does give a huge advantage to the solar players, that they never had the chance of same equal opportunities compared with other industries, because the other industries probably will take 20 years or 30 years to reach that level. And for example, if I'm still in IBM, I probably have to, work there for, I don't know, if I'm ambitious, I might be a director level, in 20 years. And but in solar, it gives you the chance to talk with the VP of JP Morgan, talk with the, the president of QCell, the chance to talk with all the big people, high people, and deal with the big companies that you never can think of, Exxon Mobil, Shell, and BP Solar, and now Nextera, NRG, which is Clearway. I mean, all those big utility companies. If you in other industries, that's just impossible. But because of the renewables and the solars, that caught everybody's attention, everybody is joining. So it does have a good combination of both the big guys and their business experience, and also the new guys brings a lot of creativity, a lot of entrepreneurship and innovation. So I definitely do think that's how solar be able to grow that fast, in such a short time.
Your first tenure at Trina lasted about 8 years. Helped them go public all the way through 2013. You and I mentioned overlap very briefly, and then you left Trina to go to a company that probably those who understand the vertical infrastructure in the industry recognize, a company named GCL. Certainly, those of our friends in Latin America would recognize GCL more readily. Talk about your transition away from Trina, your eventual semi-retirement from solar, and then sort of being called back into active duty at Trina.
Yeah. Like I said, I was taking care of Trina's overseas business at the beginning, and then majority focused on the polysilicon supply chain, and that was all the way until 2011, when the economy crunches happened in 2009, 2010, and then the supply is not an issue anymore. That. I told Mr. Guy, I'm going to build a supply chain system that you don't have to worry about polysilicon for the next 10 years. It was, quite a coincidence that, 2 years ago we had a, supply issue again. That was
10 years later.
2020. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So 10 years later. And then, because the supply chain is not a major issue anymore. So I'm more interested into the downstream side, so I took, since Andy Klump left the company, I actually took over the business development department. And from there, I founded Trina's downstream development, what we call the PD, project development department. So we start to, invest into the downstream side, in Europe, in US. And that also runs well. We successfully built a project, a group of project, roughly about 40 megawatt, in Europe, in Italy and Spain, and then successfully sold that to Barclay, I believe.
Right.
That was 2012, and 40 megawatts sounds nothing right now, but
it was
back
huge
to that
then.
time, it's quite big, because
the largest, for context, some of the largest projects in the U.S. at that time were in the sub 20 megawatt range.
Exactly, and the total investment is huge, actually. Because the system was like €4 per watt, and so 40 megawatt is way over 100, 100 million, euros already, and so because of that, we actually build a relationship with the CBB Bank and with other investors. We build a relationship with all the local legal firms, Milbank in US, and so all those
building
early
the
guys.
ecosystem.
Right, exactly. And Trina came from manufacturing, and so the downstream business is a little bit mismatched with the upstream module business. For example, upstream want as lightweight as possible, but the downstream is more asset management. You keep on building the project, you keep on accumulating the asset. So you translate a one-time capex into a long-term investment returns, and that doesn't match with Trina's financial report requirements, and it cannot count into your main source of the income. And so Wall Street was not very happy about that. So the company, of course, every quarter's earning call, you do see a portion of those resources has been carved out, and you don't see that comes back.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, with more and more pipelines being built, more assets has been accumulated on your book. So the debt ratio become higher. And so that was a time that, Trina decided to slow down the downstream side. And the GCL happened to be very aggressive, into that direction, for those years. So I was only in GCL for a short period, maybe a little bit less than 2 years, in their San Francisco office. I was the CEO heading off their, overseas project development.
For those who are unfamiliar, can you characterize GCL as a company? Like, who are they?
Yeah, they are probably one of the biggest private utility company in China. As you know, most of the utility company is actually owned by the state in China, and they
own a lot of hydro, right?
No, they own coal file. Yeah,
coal. Okay.
Yeah. The hydro is the other guy, Hanergy.
Hanergy, that's right. Hanergy, yeah. So, and GCL also, at that time, were they getting into silicon and polysilicon manufacturing?
Yes. We've been knowing him because they were the first polysilicon maker in China that came out in 2009, maybe 2008. And we are the first company to sign up with them. In matter of fact, I signed up with my team because I was working on the procurement, right? So that's how Chairman Zhu and I start to know each other. And so he, after polysilicon and wafer, they start to invest more to the downstream side because they know all their customers are module players, so they don't want to compete with their customers. So they jump directly to the downstream side, saying, "Okay, if I have the downstream project, I can buy the panels from my customer, so it can link
create pull through
upstream, right? Exactly, and the downstream." So that was the reason I joined the company, and because they are more ambitious and more aggressive, and I think they came from utility background, so they definitely know how to play asset management, and their balance sheet definitely can fit. And so that's the time I joined. I think that's. But be frankly with you, back to that time, I thought I've already seen most of the things from solar. I was on the procurement side, I was on the fundraising side, I was on the business development side, I was on the downstream side, project development. So I thought I've done everything. I thought I've seen everything. I start to lose the steam a little bit because all those years, as you can imagine, it's super busy. With the solar speed. So I was already thinking about, retiring from solar or at least take a break. So once, GCL, GCL has their problems. So later, the project development side didn't go very well, running out of the money and to start to significantly, shrinking the business. There was a time, I decide, to take a break, and so I went to be a teacher. I do the volunteer teaching work in the in the rural areas in Yunnan, teach the middle school, high school, elementary school, and teaching those poor kids. My purpose is also to let those people never even stepping out of their city to see what the outside world looks like. So I built the network to let them talk with the foreign kids or outside kids every week, and I introduce them different curriculums, not only the things they can learn academically in China, which is pretty tough, but also to introduce them the US movies, the songs, music, and the space tech knowledge, and all kind of things. So that actually I really enjoyed that. And then, I was the principal also for international school, which is partially funded by Trina. Um, and it was a, you know, international school that teaches the Cambridge curriculums all the way
Mm,
from kindergarten to the grade 12 senior year. The original purpose is, because we have more and more foreign workers, coming from all over the place. So, Trina want to invite their families also to
yeah.
be, relocated to, closer to their work. And so we built that school, accordingly.
Wow.
And Trina, I think
That's
Trina
amazing.
takes
I didn't know
about
that.
30% of the investment, and then the local government in China, in order to run a school, you have to get the local government support. So
Sure.
they takes about 70%, of the stack. And later when, international school running into some issues that, in the last 5 years, the political environment really changed a lot. And I won't say it runs backwards, but at least, I can't touch too much details, on
So
that
I get it.
topic.
I get
Right.
it. Yeah.
So eventually, Trina sold the stack back to the government.
Right.
And,
And that was around 2018.
2017. Yeah.
Okay.
2017, 2018. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a time actually, the good thing about the teacher is also that you do get 2 holidays, right? So my son at that time was right, in the high school, and I actually took my son back to China, and just let him learn Chinese first because I do think Chinese is a harder language. And he didn't come back. He was born in Austin, Texas, and then he was sent to China around year 2 and took all the school over there. I didn't even send him to the international school, just go to the public school and, learn the true Chinese, with, all the Chinese kids. And he didn't come back until grade 5,
Wow.
yeah. So he came back for the middle school. And, so 2018 was, he was just getting to the middle school. And, so we took a summer vacation. We normally take summer vacations, for a couple of months, just my son and me. And this time with my wife, we were traveling to Iceland and then came back to Canada. We were driving, back from, Vancouver back to California. And, and then Mr. Gao called again. And, that was yeah, the summer of 2018.
Yeah.
If you remember, 2018 was the first year that Trump administration, come up with the 201 tariff.
Yeah.
30% of the tariff all of a sudden dropped. And that almost killed the market.
Yeah.
Plus, that was almost the end of the ITC. So people
Yeah.
bought a lot of safe harbor in
Hmm.
2017. And so 2018 was really, really bad, for the market. The market almost shut down, I believe, lower than 7 gigawatt for that year, compared with almost 15 gigawatt the year before in 2017, so, shifting to half. And, so a lot of manufacturer being forced to either shut down or suspend it. And, the inventory was really high. The price dropped like, hell. And, well, the thing is, even with the price drop, you leverage 30% of the tariff onto it. So the customer end up with the higher, cost of the modules.
Right.
And neither seller or buyer can take advantage 30%. You pay the tariff already. And so that was the time the market was really down. And so Mr. Gao called me again during the summer. And because I was one of the earlier founder for the US
Right.
office in here back in 2010, I want to see if I'm still interested in solar. And, he knows I have the passion about the solar. I
Yeah.
definitely don't want to see the US market, especially, which is my home,
Yeah.
country, to fail. onto the solar. And so at the end of the year, October, I came back and you know start to going through everything step by step. Um, Luckily, the market rebounded. That's how actually solid the solar industry is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many rounds of up and downs and fluctuations. People find a solution. Not only, everybody working together to find a solution. Buyers, sellers, EPC, financer, PPA guys. Everybody come to find the solution when regulation changes all of a sudden. Which we saw this lethal, right? To the industry. No, it actually inspired people to be more creative, in order to find a solution. So that's how to, the market bounced back, really fast. And, I still remember 2018 when I came back, the whole year Trina sold about 440 megawatt.
Wow.
And 240 was actually, after I came back in October. So basically Q4 220.
Yeah.
And then the whole first 3 quarters was only barely 200 megawatt.
Yeah.
And because of that, we had a shutdown and the team only have about, around 10 people left. So I have to restructure things, most of the team. We got a couple of the good people left. Our legal, our, utility current head, all those people has already been Trina and Trina US for more than almost 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also, we invited a lot of new talents to join the team. So every year since 2018, we've been growing, coming back really statically. I remember 2019, we did roughly about 1.9 gigawatt. And then 2020, we did 2.2, 2.4. And this year, we're going to ship almost 5 gigawatt to the US. We are actually number one, in terms of the importation volumes into the US this year. You have to consider the last 3 years was the abnormal market situation. We had the COVID, we had, logistic congestions, we have the supply chain chaos, we have the regulation change, and right, with the UFLPA, WRO, so many things happen in the last 3 years. But Trina US has been growing statically, very, from year to year. I'm so proud of my team. Yeah, it's
you have a lot to be proud of.
Yeah,
and fun side note, I was hired started the day after John Della Piazza, and he always, I won't use the exact words he uses, but he always calls me the new guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. What a good hand, that guy. Seriously, John, I know if you're listening to this, man, you're one of the good guys, one of the legends that people really appreciate in the industry. And he's been one of the steady team members that's been there since 2011.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's one of the advantages that Trina has, that we like localization. We like internationalization. As you can see, that compared with some other, Asian, suppliers, Trina's style is always to give the region as autonomy as possible. Also, we authorize the region to make most of the business decision effectively and efficiently locally here, So that's why we have a full functional team here instead of just a sales office. We have legal, we have HR, we have operation, we have logistic, everything are handling in here, which we do believe is the best service to our customer. And it's the best way to understand the market. And because you have to locate in here, you have to live in here, you have to deal with day-to-day operation, have the hands-on work, talk with the customer all the time. we currently we have about 80 people in the US. All of them are US citizens. All of them
Wow.
are
80,
resident in
that's a
here.
massive team.
It's all over
Yeah.
the country. We, unlike, some other, Chinese companies that the leader are actually living in China or in Singapore, but in here, everything happens here. Yeah. So we believe it's much more effective way to understand the market first, and then to run to win the trust with the customer. You have to be with the customer in order to feel their pains when the market is down and enjoying their, success, when the market is good, right? So we're so proud of that structure, and we're trying to expand that, as you can see, so with this new US manufacturer, we're going to bring almost 1,500, jobs. And our US management team will also grow double to 160 to 200 in next year. That Because not only the module divisions that we have right now, we also consolidate with our storage team, our tracker team. Everything will be localized in here. So yeah, it's gonna be, yes, a busy coming years, and I do envision that.
What a tremendous growth story. And I would wager that most folks, I didn't know it until this call. Most folks would likely be surprised to find that you are a U.S. citizen. And even I, who worked at Trina a decade ago, a little under, am surprised to hear 80 employees. I feel like those are metrics that folks don't really know or understand about the way that Trina and probably others who are looking at you as an example and following suit are really adopting a localization culture. I'm really glad that you pointed that out. There's something else that is core to the sort of the philosophy of Trina that I want to point to, and that's the name. Can you explain Trina in your own words?
Trina is actually originally from a Chinese philosophy, the Taoism, the yin yang feng shui, and that in order to be successful in anything, in your career, in your business, that you have to have three basic elements, which is the right timing and the right location and right people. So what we call the sky is the timing, and the earth is the location, and the people in the middle. So those are the three basic elements that eventually conduct to a successful story or career or business. And so that's why we call ourselves Trina, which is Trinity from China. That unified those three basic elements. And that's also aligned with Trina's mission and a vision, that we always try to be customer centric. We always try to be localized. We always try to be integrity to our customers. We're very dedicated to our the what we're doing and commit to. And well, in the right industry, we are, with the good timing. I always tell our team that I don't expect that we can win every market situation, because solar is very famous for its fluctuations, and you don't beat the market. But I want to make sure that what we are doing every day in here, and also plan for the future, that we will be the last one to survive and the first one to recover when the market recovers.
Wow.
Yeah. So I won't say, that everybody can be the fortune teller for the market. That's just almost impossible. Otherwise, why don't we just go directly buy the stock, right?
Yeah.
But I do think every little piece in here, that what we do right now, for example, module has become more and more commodity, and also this round of the module technology, the efficiency wise of the cell and module is almost reaching a roof already. So it's It used to be module efficiency is only about 9%, 10%, 20 years ago. And now
Right.
it's 23, 24% already.
Yeah.
But it's reaching an end.
Yeah.
The technology, the silicon-based technology can only reach this high, So your improved room can be, 23.8, 24.2. It's not going to be a huge differences anymore. The rooms are getting less and less. So this run of the technology to make the module bigger that we used to deal with 200-watt panels or 300-watt panels. Now we're dealing with, our new N-type can reach 600, watt panels. And the next year, the N-type 21 came out, it can reach 700-watt panels. The majority of those advantages of this run of the technology evolving majority are contribute not only to the module itself, it's actually contribute more to the system.
Yeah.
With the bigger module, the power density is better so that you can use less BOS, you can use less tracker, you occupy less land, and your LCOE can be lower. We need more engineers, to targeting those solutions,
We certainly do.
to find the best way to make the system working better. Giving an example that you probably know, Trina bought a tracker company, Uncliff, 5 years ago. And it took us a while to integrate those things together. The reason that we bought a tracker company is not to have a head-on-head competition with Nextracker or ATI. I've been knowing Dan Sugar for quite some time, since the beginning, when the power lights, right? And I respect him a lot because he's very dedicated to the LCOE and the tracker technology also. We believe there's still things that we can do in order to contribute that. Why? The module and tracker are so close to each other that I call the 4 categories that we definitely can do better. One is the product compatibilities. So EPC companies normally buy the modules and buy the records separately. And later they find out, okay, I need an actual drill hole on the frame. The snow load is not fitting very well. And the ring resistance, how to make the tracker better work with the module, But generally speaking, these kind of product compatibilities can be better designed into the structure at the early stage in the production phase, right? So that's why we think, with the tracker and the module handled by the same company, that we be able to embed a lot of the technology into the design to make the product compatibility much better in the future. Same thing as the supply chain management, that people buying the module in the market based on whatever the availability the supplier offered to them. They buy the tracker also from ATI. But unfortunately, ATI said, I don't have the availability in December. I can only do next April. On the other hand, the module guys tell you, oh, I don't have next April or May delivery. I only have January delivery. So the customer end up to bought the module. They don't have any choice. They have to buy the module.
They got modules in a warehouse waiting for trackers.
Yeah, waiting for the trackers. With our what we call the Trina Pro solution, that we're gonna streamline those, supply chain, delivery schedules for the customer to significantly lower your warehousing fees and increasing your installation efficiencies. And same thing as project financing. With Trina bankable to both our tracker and a module, and we're gonna make the whole Trina Pro bankable. So the bank can rely on Trina's liabilities in order for the whole project easier to get financed. So that's, and the after sale service, instead of blaming module guys saying it's not my problem, or the tracker guys saying, oh, how did you guys do it? Trina become a one-stop service, to those solutions. So that's how we see it's not only module that matters. And now we bring the storage also into the game, so we believe we can contribute a lot to the industry more, in terms of this overall, solution business. So that's also one of the directions we're trying to do. So that's why we need, more than double the team, and and I said, module manufacturer is only the first step, and we're gonna bring tracker, we're gonna bring the storage, we're gonna bring the whole ecosystem over.
I want to just comment on what you just outlined. The reason specifically, I know that there are a lot of detractors in the marketplace for any downstream or cross-stream development of the traditional module manufacturers into other products. It started with Trina's long had this from Trina Mount, and we had this discussion a decade ago. All of your peers have dabbled with storage and other products to introduce, and there's always sort of grumbling in the marketplace of like, stay in your lane, that kind of thing. But the way that you just described the 4 categories, candidly, is the best I've heard at enunciating the value proposition of a manufacturer with a balance sheet like Trina for downstream product development. In particular, for those who are unfamiliar with Enclave, they had a giant footprint in Europe and in Latin America, been around for a while. One thing that I guess I'm assuming here Trina brings to that product is the deep bench of R&D, which is something that I think folks don't inherently sort of connect the dots, right? Like your ability from the deep well of project development experience at Trina, which Trina is not the only manufacturer that has that, but certainly has a huge portfolio of projects that have been developed in-house. And the ability to apply what I still think is still probably the largest R&D budget towards improving a product that was in the marketplace that was performing and had areas where it could be improved. So I want to underline and underscore that for folks that are listening, because this I've just really enjoyed the nature of the conversation of getting to dig into the history of a company like Trina that for me is one of the legacy solar manufacturers of our time, because you've been long suffering in the market, and a clear leader in market development and first to recover, to your point, and your ability to preserve capital on the balance sheet, and even taking the company back private to be able to do the things that you wanted to do with that capital, is what allows you to position yourself with new product introductions and with manufacturing in a way that I think few of your peers can do. And I would say maybe very few of your peers can accomplish.
We're trying. Yeah. My point is always that you have to really understand the business. You have to really dedicate yourself into the business to understand not only yourself, but also your customer, but also your service providers, also understand the EPCs. A lot of Chinese companies are good at selling the products, are good at the manufacturing at the low cost, but they are not very culture centric. So when they move out of China and try to sell into other, customers who doesn't even speak Chinese, for example, US is very appreciate engineering values. Really, that's why tracker is well adapted in the US market. But other, Chinese is very cost centric, so that you see a really cheap, system cost in China. You barely see that in here. And, we appreciate that kind of additional engineering, and we have the good software, good management team, O&M team that can guarantee the performance of the system, instead of just, cheap systems, which is very necessary in China because most of the downstream projects are owned by the state companies. So they care a lot about budget, right? So they have to fit. And whether the system is performing good or bad, it's none of their business, and they don't even care. So it's a different mentality, and it's different values we are chasing after. So we have to understand, each different country and each different policy set and each different customers. so that we be able to provide the best value to them instead of just the cheapest product.
I'm so grateful for not only the depth of understanding that I've gained by going through this conversation with you, and how much you've been willing to transparently share about the process. As we turn the corner here to kind of, as I like to say, towards home base to wrap the interview, I'd like to dig in a bit more into your own personal development. You've been a tremendous leader in the industry. You've got an opportunity to lead multiple teams. You've also had an opportunity to be mentored and be peers with great leaders. When you think about advice or mentorship that have been provided to you, or even guidance in your own career, as you reflect on that, is there anything that served for you as foundational insight that, in hindsight, it's the kind of thing that you often share in your teams? Anything that someone said to you that really had an impact on the direction of your career?
Yeah, if that's a lesson learned, from all the career, I would say a balance. I give that talk in the cell tag, and I give that talk before. The balance between ambition and the execution, right? You have to be very aggressively when you think things and plan things, but you have to be very realistic and conservatively in terms of the execution. You cannot overcommit yourself. Whatever you say, you better fulfill those ones. Otherwise, it will bring not only the damage to your customer, but also the damage to yourself. And we saw that happen in the industry when people were over aggressive. And sometimes this balance is hard to keep. If you are not ambitious and aggressive enough, sometimes, it's hard to inspire your team. It's hard to persuade your customers. But on the other hand, if your execution power cannot keep up with your promise or commitment, then, sooner or later that will kill you. And we saw that from the industry also. So I would say always balance and diversification. If you saw in the early days, I mentioned there was 7 polysilicon producers in the world 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And now only 3 of them left in the US.
Yeah.
And there used to be top players, respectful players like, SunTech or LDK or Ingli, and they are gone. There are US companies like Solar War, Solangio. They either run into the troubles or, didn't survive. Sun Edison also, Sun Edison was very aggressive.
MEMC?
Yeah, MEMC, yeah. Right. So I would say, when we plan things, we brainstorm, we be creative, we be ambitious, we be aggressive. When we execute it, we want to make sure that, it's always a balancing between be patient, don't get ahead of yourself. Don't try to run before you can walk. And be reasonable, be logic, and that's the best way to win the trust. Doesn't matter from your supplier or from your customer, that you are not only here to do this deal with them. Like I said, it's not selling the product anymore. It's not, there's still, some of the companies, they are opportunisms, so when the market is hot, when this year is hot, they just jump in and they do whatever they do. And later, when the market is down, they are just gone. They shut their factory and let people go. I don't know about other regions. At least, I haven't served in other regions that much in terms of the sales. But in US, this way doesn't work. People cares about credibilities. People care about their tracking record. People care about the bankabilities.
Yeah.
Don't try to be an opportunist in here. Try to think about what kind of advantages you have, what kind of core competency you have. Always keep those in mind, because if you are good, that you scale up, you magnify your results. If you are not good and you bigger it is, riskier it is. If you are bad, bigger it is just killing yourself faster. So giving a very realistic, example, the current RA, a lot of people saying, oh, government start to give the incentive, 7 cents for the module, 4 cents for the cell, and we got to jump in, right? No matter what, we're going to borrow the money. This is kind of like using the leverage to, day trade your stock, So today's market is good. Let's jump in everything. Let's gamble. Let's double down. Let's all in, I don't totally buy that. Be frankly, we're very enthusiastic, by the way, for the RA, for the support. That's why we be able to land our supply, first manufacturer here. But also you need not only the phase 1 plan, but also the phase 2 plan. What you're going to do. You also need to think about after 2030, when the RA start to stepping down, are you qualified to survive? How do you qualify to survive? Right? Well, we definitely believe this will inspire the US market to grow significantly from the current 20, 30 gigawatt per year to maybe 80, 100 gigawatt per year. US definitely need that, that's for sure. If we compare with our peers from China, they're doing, almost 100 gigawatt, 200 gigawatt per year now. And we're way behind. Compared with Europe, we're also behind, right? So we definitely need that, but, if the US system cost is always like super high and the investment returns fluctuated, are more risky with the interest hike, can this kind of, plan be sustainable, right? I mean, so if things happen, what is the contingency plan? You can't just shut down and go, I mean, no. For any of the big companies, it's impossible, right? 1,500, or even more employees you got to be responsible for. So you have to make sure that your cost is low enough to be the last one survive in this industry. Doesn't matter, up or down, doesn't matter good or bad. But also, how you be able to drive that cost down. You have to bring the supply closer. You have to localize some things. You have to diversify sometimes also. Don't only bet on one thing. So what's going to happen if the policy change again, right? So that's why we keep on investing into Southeast Asia. We build our wafer factory over there. When the UFLPA come out, we start to use 100% of the non-Chinese poly, but we also build our, Qinghai, big manufacturer base, which goes all the way from polysilicon to the module, so that we know the traceability of everything from mine to the module, that in the future we can provide all those kind of traceabilities. So as a big responsible company, we're not going to act like those smaller opportunisms that when the market is hot, I just jump in. And we plan things ahead and we prepare for our future. We invest into our future. So we try to make our fate into our hand, and prepare for those ones. Don't just bet on, I always tell my team, it doesn't matter who's guessing is right or who's guessing is wrong. Don't say I told you so. No, this kind of things is useless. It's the matter of when the thing happened, do we have a way? When the good thing happened, do we have a way to catch the opportunity? When the bad thing happened, do we have the way to minimize our, impacts? Those are the things. I don't believe it's the 100% that covers how Trina survived to here or to win all the way now, but I think that kind of nature does definitely running in our vein, that protect the Trina and protect the industry.
You reminded me, phase 2, Everyone is announcing the factory openings. I don't hear a lot of talk about multiple phases yet. Trina is vocal about
Exactly.
not just the first step, but the full life cycle. Can you talk about the phase 2 plan for those who haven't already heard about it?
We haven't officially announced the phase 2, but we have already started to talk with our downstream partners, talk with the investors to prepare for the cell to be manufactured in US for a couple of reasons. One is the request from the downstream customers for the future domestic contents requirements. The other one, of course, is that cell is very fragile. So instead of import the cell into the country, can we make it in here? That's something that we definitely are planning for the phase 2.
Yeah.
We also see a shortage of the US made cell, in the market. Cell obviously are much harder than the module in terms of the lead time, in terms of the technology, in terms of the CapEx that required. Cell almost requires double the CapEx or sometimes even more. We saw people claim they can do TOPCon technology, but they, unlike Trina, be frank with you, I think in terms of the TOPCon industrialization, Jinko and Trina are the two best, most advanced that's being tested in China. And globally, they are already, prepare TOPCon for more than a year, and they run in the mass production size, and they ship to the customer already. And all of those give the experience that, some newcomers claim they can do TOPCon, but they never had a mass production in China or anywhere else. And based on our experience, it took almost a year. And there are other things. You do require higher purity of the polysilicon, in order to make a better quality of the wafer to supply N-type, supply TOPCon. If you are still using less qualified, polysilicon, solar grade polysilicon, even solar grade, you have higher purity, right? You were running into trouble, in terms of the quality control of the N-type. And that's why, even, US poly is not a requirement for the domestic contents. We still sign a long-term contract with the US poly suppliers because we believe in the quality. And the same thing as the supply chain, that we are probably the only company has the most independent supply chain outside China, including polysilicon, wafer, including some of the bombs. For example, if somebody claims they're going to do the cell manufacture in the US, where do they get the wafer from? Right? If you get the wafer from China, you need a traceability, right? You need the UFLPA qualification. You need anti-circumvention, all those kind of stuff. I won't comment about other people's announcement, but I don't believe all the current announcement in the market eventually could be fulfilled 100%. In the industry will be lucky if half of those announcements eventually can become real. That's why you have to have sustainable plans, So, for example, obviously different phases have different capital requirements. If you don't have a capital plans and, you're going to running into cash flow issues very soon, because before you can produce, before you can earn the money back, you probably run out of the money already, so it is a very capital intensive, business to run the manufacturer, so that's why its barrier is kind of high. And it is not only technical driven, but also know-hows, equipment tunings, all those little things into the manufacturer. That's why we say Asian manufacturers currently are leading in terms of the cost control, in terms of the productivity. I do see some of the US manufacturer that actually, set up the manufacturer in Southeast Asia, but they cannot even improve their efficiency, cell efficiency. They have to ask experienced Chinese workers to come into their factory to help them to increase the efficiency, their cell efficiency. I know that happened before.
Steven, apart from work, what do you nerd out about when you're not thinking about building the largest solar panel manufacturing company?
I like to travel, although most of my travel are business travels. I like to play sports. I like to play basketball.
Basketball.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I broke my ACL 3 times already,
Oh, wow.
that significantly, limited my movements, but I still like to play. I like to play hard, obviously, as much as possible if I can, until I cannot run. And yeah, I like to read, engineering books, history books.
Yeah. What sort of history?
Chinese history or ancient Greek and U.S. history. I'm interested in all the histories. It's just a hobby, and
Yeah.
and
Is it what's something that you like to share with others that kind of shows your history buff cred? What's something that you feel is like relatively should be better known about history that you find people just don't understand or they don't know much about?
For that portion, I have to go with the Chinese history, especially the recent, Chinese history. I would say the last 50 years. It's a sensitive topic in China, but, generally speaking, that part of the history is kind of lost. And, people still don't, especially for foreigners, they still don't understand why the Cultural Revolution happened and, why it ends so sudden and all those kind of things. This is a kind of forbidden topic in China, but that's the portion I definitely think that people have the rights to, learn more about those ones, and even the histories of, during the same period of time, Korean Wars.
If you're one of the 100+ people or 1,500 in the factory who Trina is bringing on board, and you get an opportunity to have dinner with Steven, now you've got some fodder for a conversation.
I know.
I certainly will be asking you more about, not on the record here, so since it's a forbidden topic, but I'd love to hear at some point your conversation around the real story behind the Cultural Revolution and why it ended so suddenly.
Absolutely.
I do agree with you that most foreigners don't understand Chinese history the way they could and or potentially should.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I was born in 74, and the Cultural Revolution ended at the 76. So I caught the tail of it, and all through my, I came to the U.S. 1993, and so it was a period of time that goes through the very traditional, Cultural Revolution, and then over to the, gradually open door policy, and gradually moving to the fast growth. So yeah, it's quite a precious experience. And then also in here, I went to school in Virginia, and and then I lived and worked in Austin, Texas for almost 10 years. And then on the West Coast side, California. Now I live in Washington State. So a lot of things that I like this kind of diversification, to get to see, everything, get to know everything, and then, you can draw the conclusion yourself. You can compare. You can understand things more.
Do you have you carved out for yourself any rituals, morning or evening routines that prime you for success, or just getting you in the rhythm for work?
Well, that's hard. As the international company, your time is it's a full day occupation. Generally speaking, starting from, I live on the West Coast, and so early morning, the East Coast has already started, and then it runs all the way to the afternoon, and and the Chinese side start to getting hop on into the cause.
How do you balance it? You've been doing it for 20 years. How do you find time for family?
I guess if you used of organize your work better, for example, I deal with my emails very quickly, and from the phone, Melissa probably knows this. I respond my team's email or customer's email normally right away, once I got it. But I also, if that's an important issue, if that's I do think that's worth to, explain more. I accumulate those emails to the nights and then, handle all of those all at once to be more efficiently. And you have to balance between your life and your work also. That I have two kids. One of them has already went to college. Like I said, my son, he went to UC Santa Barbara, and computer science major again. That runs in the family. Um, and as I said, I spent a lot of summertime with him when he was a kid. We traveled together. When he came back to US, we spent almost 2 months to travel around the US. We started from Chicago and then Cincinnati, Cleveland, Detroit, then go all the way to the East Coast and then visit a UVA and then come to Austin, Texas, where he was born. I don't expect him to understand everything, but I want him to get a feeling, this is where you're born and this is what the U.S. culture looks like. And we joined different games, baseball, basketball, we took different transportation. We were driving, flying, we take Amtrak, we take Greyhound.
Wow,
yeah,
cool.
So
Greyhound.
Yeah, Greyhound.
That's an experience a lot of Americans haven't had.
I know. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So
I've known you for a long time from afar, but I'm so impressed with the career that you've built and the impact that you have, that you've been able to have on not just one company, but our entire industry, truly. And I am grateful for the opportunity to chat with you now for more than 2 hours. It's been a tremendous ride. I'm looking forward to hearing how folks are also receive this episode. If other folks also would like to get in touch with you, where do you like to be found? Are you, you mentioned Elon Musk earlier. Are you the kind that's on Twitter tweeting? Are you active on LinkedIn? How could folks reach out to you?
Email, and I do use the WeChat a lot, and I don't have time for all the social media, so I'm not a big social media fan. I do have most of the accounts, but I barely check that every once a quarter. Or I'm a face to face person also. Yeah. I mean, we can set up the schedules to meet each other, grab a drink together. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, WeChat, of course, is the platform of choice for most Asians, certainly most Chinese. So if you are on WeChat, you should look up Steven Zhu there and see if he is active. If you really do want to reach out to Steven and you want to do so by email, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll see if I can broker that introduction for you. Steven, as we wrap, I like to end with what we call a bold prediction. When we look out to 2030 and beyond, we've got, if we look from there backwards, we've got a thriving domestic manufacturing marketplace. It's not just Trina, but it's, a half dozen others perhaps that are actually helping us meet the goals and the needs of our market of 100 gigawatts or more. What did we unlock? What did we get right that put us in that place?
If we too much rely on the incentives, but are not efficient enough to keep on driving the cost down, then once the incentive is gone, the market will be sudden death, or at least interrupted. Same philosophy if we are too much rely on the domestic contents. Then we miss the opportunities to diversify our supply chain to reach a lower cost and higher efficiency. So although the whole industry is incentive inspired or ignite, but it should not rely on that forever. It only help you to kick off, but it doesn't help you to survive long. If you know what I mean. That it's a good start. It's like 20 years or 30 years ago the German came up with the feeding trough. But by utilizing that kickoff, we have to do a lot of things to reach a higher goal, to bring more advanced technology, to train the people to, a better way, more efficient, more productive, and make your, supply chain more resourceful, more diversified, more secure, and to make sure your costs is keep on getting lower. And like I said, simply by reducing labor's costs or material costs, you cannot lower the cost that much. You have to increase your efficiency. You have to increase your productivities. You have to increase your technology, improve your technology in order to reach a lower cost. So and a lot of things, like I said, were wasted, in terms of the EPC, in terms of these, warehousing, in terms of the logistic, in terms of putting things together, so that's the things that I do think people should give the efforts to, because, you're not getting the money. It's just simply wasted. And, with the both side efforts, we definitely can be able to, get those rooms back and, so everybody can enjoy it. And you have to be, dynamically manage the business. The policy is not something that we totally can predict, so it's the matter of when that happens, what can we do?
Well, Steven, bringing it full circle to the way that you began the interview more than 2 hours ago, if we rely on long-term incentives, we cannot reach grid parity. And companies like Trina have been created to help us achieve the lowest cost inputs and get solar and other renewables down to grid parity so that we can, in fact, offset and replace the legacy energy infrastructure.
Exactly. We're not trying to, do the solar and make somebody suffer. It's exactly the opposite way. We are bringing the technology and renewables to make sure people can enjoy their life better and live longer and make money. And, so that's why, don't take the short run, take the long run.
Don't take the short road. I think that is a great way to put a cap on what has been a tremendous interview. Steven Zhu is the president of Trina US, and as you've heard over the last many minutes, has been a sometimes quiet hand moving the stern of what has become one of the more influential companies in the solar industry. Steven, thank you for sharing the story. Thank you for your guidance and leadership, and for being a part of the vision of one of the companies that truly will be in history remembered as a company that helped create the market that we all enjoy.
It's all my pleasure. Yeah, we're very excited into this industry. We're very excited to work, with Trina and Trina's partners. Yeah, so let's do it together.
Hey, thank you once again for making it all the way through this episode. Thank you for following us into 2024. I hope that you'll stick along for the ride this year. We're going to have some themes popping up that guide our conversations. We're going to be really digging into our Tactical Tuesdays and our live broadcasts. We're going to be expanding our Resource Labs community with new announcements coming in the coming days. Please don't miss a thing by tuning in over at resourcelabs.co. Sign up to join our newsletter. There's a whole lot more coming where that is concerned. And if you'd like to know how you could reach thousands of solar warriors and clean tech champions twice a week, just like our sponsors do, please go check us out at mysuncast.com/sponsor. Thanks to those companies that do help make this show free to you each and every week. It only costs your time, which I admit is the only non-renewable resource you've got. So thanks for investing it here with us once again. Hope to see you back here again on Tuesdays for our Tactical Tuesdays and these Thursday episodes that can sometimes get a little long, but are so worth it as we deep dive with executives on the front lines of the clean energy transition. Remember, you are what you listen to. Thanks again for showing up, Solar Warrior. It's half the battle.